back to like a... What if we did like a cave diving? These are always... Dude, these cave diving videos always get my heart racing, bro. I'm not watching an hour and a half. A cave diving marathon. No thanks. Have I seen this one? Have I seen this one? Have I? I don't know. Let me see.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Scary Interesting.
I haven't liked it.
In this video, we're going to go over 4 horrifying cave stories.
I don't think I've seen this one.
As always, viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Bro, cave diving is one of those things that like always gets my heart pounding. Okay. Hey, I woke up in the morning.
By the afternoon
okay,
of
my
Tuesday,
bad. You
July
go,
1st, 1975, a holiday weekend underground was almost over. Several groups of cavers from Ontario had just spent 4 days in West Virginia, making the most of the region's caves. For one of these groups, there was time for one last stop before the trip home. Their last excursion would be in Barnes Pit in Pocahontas County. Its entrance drop was only about 20 feet or 6 meters deep, making it suitable for a bit of ladder practice before the group packed up and left. That afternoon, 28-year-old George joined students Marge and Stephanie near the entrance. While the two women handled getting the ladder ready, George moved toward the lip of the opening to judge the best place to position it. A deep rumbling sound then caused Stephanie to turn quickly and look back toward George. Her head whipped around just in time to see him thrown backward with his arms spread out as though the ground itself had been pulled away from him.
What?
The sound came from a collapse that occurred on the right side of the entrance.
Oh, dude,
and in the span of just 3 to 5 seconds, several large rocks shifted and one enormous boulder crashed onto George.
Getting wedged by rocks in a cave is horrifying, bro. Some of these rocks can weigh like thousands of pounds. And we don't have anything to move it, bro. I will never go in a cave.
Pin him against the rock on the opposite side of the...
If somebody told me they'll give me $10 million to dive into a cave, to do cave diving, and it's not even that dangerous of one, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. I'll live in poverty my whole life. You keep your $10 million. Give it to someone else. You won't ever catch me slipping into a cave. I'm 263 pounds. People who are 263 pounds... don't go in caves.
Opening. It came to rest across George's chest and abdomen, trapping him upright.
GG's.
Then nearby, another tall slab of stone appeared to settle in place against the first.
GG.
The boulder sitting across George's body was later estimated to weigh around 2 tons, and no one there had any realistic way to move something like that by hand.
Told you.
His face had gone pale,
chip it away.
and he was starting to breathe while the people around him tried to understand what had just happened. When they did, calls for assistance went out immediately. In the meantime, those of the pit tried to do anything they could to buy George some time. A car jack was set between the boulder and the rock wall beside the entrance in hopes of opening even a small gap. The effort did manage to create a narrow space only a few inches wide.
I would immediately start chipping it away
to try to hold the weight back, but the change was minimal.
From the middle.
It didn't seem to take enough pressure off George to make a real difference. If anything, the sense of urgency only grew. He was still trapped, and every passing minute was making the situation worse.
We run out of air, too.
As rescuers worked around him, one problem after another began to pile up. An ambulance attendant went to give George oxygen, only to discover that the first cylinder was empty. A second was then brought over, but that one couldn't be used properly either because it was leaking from a missing gasket.
What the fuck?
Through all of this, George remained conscious for a time. One firefighter who spoke with him said George didn't sound angry or panicked so much as concerned about everyone else. Incredibly, he seemed almost sorry for the trouble the accident was causing.
Canadian. Sorry.
Here was a man pinned beneath an enormous boulder, fighting for breath, and still worrying about the people trying to save him. His condition, though, was getting worse fast. Before long, he began to convulse.
Oh, shit.
Then, about an hour and a half after the rockfall, George stopped breathing. Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation was attempted, but there was no response. George was gone.
Damn it.
After a series of calls, a doctor and nurse finally arrived roughly 2 hours after the accident. Even then, the scene around the pit was still dangerous enough that the doctor couldn't simply walk up to George. He had to be secured with a safety line, and from about 20 feet away, he pronounced George dead. In the end, it took about 6 hours after the accident before his body could be removed. His death was later reported as the first cave fatality in Pocahontas County in more than 40 years.
Lord, bro. Yeah, you ain't never
On the
catch me in a
afternoon
cave.
of August 29, 1976, 4 cavers made their way into Cass Cave on Sheep Mountain in West Virginia. Deep enough into the cave to be committed, but still early in the trip, they came to a steep vertical drop that stretched roughly 175 feet or 53 meters. To get down it, they then rigged rope and prepared to rappel. By around 9 p.m., 26-year-old Hans started down the rope, and almost immediately things began to go badly. Near the top of the drop was
Things always go badly in cave diving, bro. It's a death trap.
a tight crevice section, and Hans got
Especially
stuck there,
underwater
jammed in a
caves.
position that made it
That's
difficult to
scary.
continue downward. Instead of pausing and carefully working through the problem, though, he tried to force his way past it. So trying to free himself, he then let go of the hand that was supposed to control his descent and used both arms to shove himself through the tight opening. This worked in the sense that he came loose, but the instant he did, he plummeted. He then shot down the rope in a free fall, and in a sudden burst of panic, Hans did what many people probably would have done. He grabbed for his safety lines, but this was a huge mistake.
Cut your hands.
The 2 backups were designed to work only if they could move and tighten properly. By grabbing them instinctively, he kept them from doing their job, so instead of stopping the fall, they slid. Hans then plunged roughly 100 feet or 30 meters before slamming into a ledge. This impact mangled his left leg and sent pain throughout the rest of his body.
Oh my god.
Thankfully, it also caused him to release the safeties, and only then did they finally catch and stop his descent. The force of the fall and sudden stoppage then swung him hard across the shaft until he crashed into the opposite wall. His head then struck the rock with enough violence to crack his helmet, and the blow damaged his carbide lamp as well. Then he swung back the other way and hit the ledge again, this time bruising his ribs badly. For a time afterward, he was left hanging upside down in the darkness, injured, dazed, and in severe pain. Somehow, though, he managed to right himself, but by then he was in terrible shape. Hans was now suspended deep underground and hurt badly enough that getting himself out was no longer an option.
Is he alone?
One of his companions then climbed back up and cut the sling, and with that obstruction removed, Hans could finally be lowered the rest of the way. By the time he reached the bottom, he had been suspended in pain for about an hour and a half. Once he was back on the floor of the cave, his group could only do so much. One then stayed with him while another headed out to find help, which began arriving around midnight. The route out of the cave would end up being a huge problem. Hans would have to be raised near a waterfall where both water and obstructions complicated the job. Rescuers set bolts to the top and began preparing a system that could bring Hans up safely. By 6:30 that morning, Hans had been secured in a harness, and the first serious attempt to bring him up was underway.
Gosh,
The first haul, though, didn't get very far
Hella
before rescuers noticed that a boulder near the root was starting to shift. Hans was then lowered back down to the floor and tucked beneath a ledge while the loose rock was deliberately brought down. Once that was dealt with, they tried again. This time, 2 rescuers went up alongside the harness to help keep it from drifting into the falling water. It was a good idea, but the cold quickly became too much for the men assisting the line, and the attempt had to be abandoned. By the 3rd attempt, the team changed tactics. They shifted the line to the same ropes the cavers had originally used on the descent. A separate line was then attached to the foot of the harness so rescuers could guide it and try to keep it clear of the falls and rock shelves. This time, the system worked better, and Hans began moving steadily upward. When the harness came within 30 feet of the top, though, it picked up too much speed and slammed into a ledge.
God.
Hans's forehead was then cut open and would later need stitches.
For fuck's
A
sake.
rescuer then rappelled down to help control the harness and guide it through the last stretch. Finally, at around noon on Monday, Hans was brought out of the cave, ending a rescue that had taken about 15 hours. Hans was then immediately transported to a hospital where he made a full recovery from a long list of injuries.
Jesus, bro.
Sitting deep within Bulgaria's Rhodope Mountains near the village of Trigrad,
All right.
Devil's Throat Cave is a popular hotspot
Devil's
with tours.
Throat.
Upwards of 30,000 people visit every year, yet hardly anyone gets in through the natural entrance, which is said to resemble the head of the devil. Many years ago, a man-made entrance was carved into the side of the mountain, and the cave for the most part has been transformed into a visitor-friendly place complete with staircases and lights.
Okay, I can
And there's
do
a really
that.
good reason no one uses the natural entrance.
But still, even that's scary because, like, even sound can disrupt things and make just rocks fall. Like that.
Just
even that
outside of it,
scares
the
me.
Trigrad River narrows between canyon walls, causing the current to pick up significantly. Once it reaches the natural entrance, the water falls down a vertical shaft, forming an underground waterfall about 138 feet or 42 meters tall.
42 meters.
The cave itself formed over time as the river forced its way through the rock, eventually causing sections of it to collapse and open into
Isn't
a
that
large
crazy how, like, over millions of years, water can just, like, get through rock? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me.
chamber. Today, that chamber is known as the Howling Halls, and it's a wide dome space where the sound of the waterfall carries throughout. The acoustics of the chamber amplify the noise, and the noise can be deafening even outside the cave. At the base of the waterfall, the river gathers briefly into a turbulent pool. From there, it continues deeper into the cave, moving toward a submerged section that marks the limit of what has been explored directly.
Yeah, see, there's people that'll crawl through like tiny tunnels like this where their head is barely above like moving water, and it can raise at any point and just fucking take you out. Yeah, I don't understand it, bro. Like, you're not doing anything. It's just an adrenaline rush.
This underwater passage...
It's worse than skydiving, in my opinion.
...blocks further access, and beyond that point, the layout of the cave is completely unknown. And for decades, people have tried to figure out where the water goes after it leaves the main chamber. On paper, the distance between where the river enters the cave and where it reemerges downstream is only about half a kilometer. Based on that, the water should pass through the cave fairly quickly. In practice, however, it just doesn't. Tests using dye have shown that it can take more than an hour and a half for the water to travel that distance. The delay suggests that the river isn't moving along a single direct path. Instead, it's likely spreading out through a more complex network of underground passages before coming back together.
And someone said, I want to crawl through that.
This theory has been difficult to confirm, though. In 1940, a large amount of timber was swept into the system during a flood, and none of it ever made it out to the other side. Even modern tracking devices haven't provided clear answers. The signals get lost not long after a device enters the system, and the equipment is never seen again. Over time, this has led to speculation about what might exist beneath the cave. It's this mystery that has earned Devil's Throat a reputation among locals.
Excuse me.
The cave has often been referred to as the Devil's Palace, and for generations, it's been associated with the idea that it separates the living world from the dead.
Whoa.
Myth aside, though, on the morning of September 18th, 1970, the Triglav Gorge in Bulgaria was as loud as ever when Siana and Evstadi arrived. A short distance downstream, where the river surfaced again, Siana and Evstadi began preparing for a dive. Both were from Varna and had come as part of a larger national caving expedition gathered in the area. But while the two were comfortable outdoors, they were still relatively new to this type of diving. Despite this, though, Siana, who was just 21 years old, and 29-year-old Evstadi were about to attempt something that no one had fully managed before. The two had decided to approach things from a different angle. Instead of following the river into the cave from above, they planned to enter from the exit point and work their way inward against the flow. It was a chance to reach sections that hadn't been properly explored.
With the water rushing toward you? Yeah, good idea.
Waterfall. Once underwater, they would have to pass through a narrow, flooded tunnel, which led directly into the deeper parts of the system. If they made it through, they'd be in territory no one had ever seen before. After the two suited up...
Is that the rush? Is that what gets people excited?
They checked their equipment one last time and stepped into the river. For a brief moment, they floated near the surface before dipping under, one after another, and angling themselves toward the submerged opening. The dive partners entered the water on that September morning in 1970 with high hopes and optimism, but they would never exit the cave. And since the only two divers on the expedition died inside the cave, very few details about what exactly happened to them are known. Strangely enough, it's not even entirely clear what actually happened that day. In the most widely accepted account, neither Siana
everything that
nor
goes in the cave just disappears.
Their bodies and equipment were never found, and there was no indication at all where they ended up. They had entered the system and then, for all intents and purposes, disappeared within it.
God.
Other sources, meanwhile, claim that the bodies of the two divers were located a few days after the dive. They were reportedly found entangled in the safety line they had been using, with the regulators no longer in place. This version suggests a loss of control at some point during the dive that resulted in both becoming ensnared in the very rope that was meant to lead them to safety. Whatever the case may be, though, the outcome was the same, as the two divers lost their lives attempting to learn some of the secrets beneath Devil's Throat Cave.
Not worth it.
As a result, Siana and Evstadi became part of the mystery themselves. A memorial plaque was eventually placed near the exit of Devil's Throat, marking the spot where the two divers entered the water for the last time.
And there's still some people that are like, oh, like, there's been no, like, known survivors to ever do this. Do you want to pack our stuff and go try it? Like, I don't understand.
Along the famous National Blue Trail in the Salona Mountains in northeastern Hungary lies Stromos Hill. The hill is located within the Egtelic National Park area and
people
was
see
once
a crack in the earth and they want to go in it.
Mining. In the 1920s, that mining led to the discovery of a labyrinth of caves, and the most famous one is Rakotsi Cave, also called Rakotsi No. 1. It's renowned as one of Hungary's most beautiful show caves, and interestingly, the cave has no natural surface entrance.
It's not even pretty, honestly.
The only access is actually through an old 200-meter-long mine tunnel.
Bunch of stagmite.
Once inside, though, it can be explored on ladders, bridges, and walkways. Then, other than the safer show cave areas, the underwater sections are popular among cave divers. It was into this beautiful but unforgiving environment that Zsolt, a 26-year-old accountant and passionate diver from Budapest, would venture. On day 1, on the afternoon of Saturday, January 26th, his group arrived at the cave's entrance, which sits about 170 meters above sea level. To ensure it would be a safe dive, they would be operating in rotating 3-person teams. Each person would also carry 2 air tanks, 4 lights, and reels with 50 meters of guideline for self-navigation. The routes they chose were also pre-mapped. Dives were limited to 25 to 30 minutes, and only familiar passages were chosen. The dives proceeded smoothly through the afternoon in the cave's clay and debris-lined passages.
That's cool, though. I like how they get like a nice little wooden platform down there. Still,
one team even reached the deepest known point at 38 meters or 125 feet without issue. Going last that day was dive leader Zsolt and Muley, who was handling the camera, and they began their turn at 5:30 p.m. They descended confidently, then found the entrance to an area known as the Devil's Pub, which is a sloping, muddy side passage leading to a larger chamber with stunning formations.
You gotta be really careful in muddy areas, because you can throw up all that mud and get blind, and not know how to get back. If you don't, you gotta hold your rope. And even then, it's so disorienting.
Inside, they captured panoramic footage, marveling at the cave's beauty before signaling to return as planned. On the way back, Muley led and Zsolt followed. As they expected, their fins had stirred up the clay and sediment, quickly turning the water into a thick brown cloud where it was impossible to see anything.
Told you.
Back at the entrance to the Devil's Pub, Zsolt trailed about a body length behind his partner. And here is where things went horrifyingly wrong. Throughout the dive, they had been laying guideline behind them as their path back through the darkness. During the maneuver at the passage entrance, though, Zsolt had pulled more line into the narrow corridor than he'd actually advanced, causing it to be pulled tight. Then, while he paused to secure the line, it slipped from his hand, and the moment it did, it pulled right back out of the passage and into the silty water.
Oh.
In the zero visibility, the thin cord vanished almost instantly, and with it, so did the only clear route back out of the cave.
Oh.
At this point, he was only a few meters from the exit, but in total darkness, he fumbled blindly. Attempts to find a new tie-off stirred even more silt, making it...
Up is down, down is up, left is right, right is left. It's just like walking in darkness.
Even harder to see anything. He did this for a few more moments until he spotted an upward passage because his bubble suggested some sort of way up. He then ascended untethered, knowing he was violating protocol, hoping for an exit. It would turn out that this wasn't an exit, and he had instead gone into a previously unknown section branching upward from the Devil's Pub. In this unmapped section, he found a small air pocket, barely 1.5 meters or about 5 feet wide. In many cases, even those covered on the channel before, these pockets don't always contain breathable air, and Zsolt knew this, and so for some time he was afraid of taking off his mask and taking his first breath. He then tried several times to dive back down to the original passage, but he could no longer orient himself in the fully stirred up water. He knew at this point he was trapped, and knowing his air tanks weren't unlimited, he eventually had to take his first breath, and when he finally did, another stroke of luck, it was breathable.
Oh, thank God.
The only question now was how long would the air last, and how long could he wait for rescue? As this was all going on, Muley waited for 20 to 30 seconds before he dove back down, but when he couldn't find any trace of Zsolt anywhere, he resurfaced worried. He then told the other divers the terrible news that Zsolt was missing, and they began organizing desperate searches. At 6 p.m., they began
motherfuckers be heading into holes called Satan's gaping flaming asshole with 0.1 survival rate. Dude, exactly. It makes no sense. I don't understand the rush that people get from this.
searching.
It's like, yo, we might die. There's a higher chance we'll die than survive. Call your friends and family. Let them know that you love them and that we're probably not going to make it out. And then they just start jumping for joy. What the fuck?
Paired teams began.
I don't understand it.
Immediately, though, this was made difficult because of the limited space they had to work.
I watch these videos because I don't understand it.
One of the other divers, Zoli, was very familiar with the area, but even he had no luck finding any sign of Zsolt. Then finally, after almost 3 hours, they were exhausted and convinced that Zolt's air supply would have finally run out by then.
Did Zsolt live?
After so much
I
time,
hope Zsolt
there was
lived.
just no hope left. They then alerted the Hungarian Cave Rescue Service at 9:12 p.m. to recover his body and started clearing all the equipment that might get in the way of the search teams. While waiting for the teams to show up, though, something happened. They were standing in silence staring at the water surface when a distant sound suddenly echoed a faint hello. At first, they thought someone had been left in the cave without a light and was calling for help to climb down the ladders. It took a while to locate where the sound was coming from, but finally they found it. A tiny crack in the wall, 9 meters from the dive base and just 3 meters or 10 feet above the water level. When they finally realized the result, they were overjoyed.
Yeah, but
They were
he's
then
in a
able
tiny
to talk to
crack.
him and confirm that he was safe and had enough air to breathe. Now they just had to get him out of there. The alcove where he was stuck was cramped, and he was sitting upright in an awkward position with his feet in the water. For 3 hours, he had shouted without any response, realizing that he could possibly die there. He also shivered in the cool air, with his wetsuit only offering limited protection. He also avoided drinking the potentially contaminated water, fearing diarrhea and further dehydration. Maybe worst of all, though, was the silence. The silence during that time was awful, and all he could hear were faint surface sounds filtering through the walls.
Jesus,
When
bro.
rescuers showed up sometime later, they determined they had two options. The first was an underwater extraction, and the second was tunneling along the crack.
Underwater
where they heard Zolt's
extraction, bro.
voice. Underwater extraction was seen as the first and easier choice. They knew he
Bro,
was
because you can cut through rock and like that, like the vibrations is, it could like, bro, it's like an avalanche. It could like make the rocks move a certain way. It's like you can't break a pillar in your house because like that one pillar could collapse this pillar and this pillar could collapse these 3 pillars. Like, bro, tunneling through is like, I don't even understand why that's an option.
trapped in a previously unknown part of the cave,
rocks
but it
would
had
just
to be
crumble
simpler
on
than
you.
tunneling through an untold amount of rock. So several more divers went down, but the visibility was just so bad that it was difficult for them to even read their
What if
instrument.
they invented something that like sucks in silt and pushes out clean water? Jeej. What's up, Josh? Jeej.
Even by holding them directly in front of their goggles. It was apparently like diving through coffee.
God
a short
damn.
while later, a man named Laszlo, one of Hungary's most experienced rescue divers, arrived.
Shout out Laszlo.
And importantly, he brought special equipment with a long hose to allow him to stay underwater for several hours straight. Laszlo then
Did he
dove
die?
into the cave, expecting
like
the rescue
Laszlo
to be
died.
quick, but he quickly ran into problems. In the murky water, he couldn't even find the entrance to the Devil's Pub at first. His second dive would going to last 4 hours, but it also failed. There were issues with his equipment hose too.
Remember, the guy that they're looking for has already been like stuck for 3 hours. So another 4 hours.
First,
What is that? Like 4, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4 hours. If he's been stuck for 3 hours and they start, and then the guy's stuck for 3 hours and then they're searching for him for 4 hours. It's like 10 hours.
50-meter one proved to be too short, and then the second one got tangled up. As all of this was going on, the rescuers were constantly talking to Zolt through the crack and with Laszlo, but it didn't help. Even after all of that, they simply couldn't find him. On day 2, on Sunday morning, Zolt's parents and wife showed up, and it was becoming obvious that the search could take days.
Fuck!
The rescuers realized that they might not be able to get him out through the water, so they decided to try to make a tunnel. Tunneling then began, but the hard limestone required special diamond drills, fuses, and micro-explosives to fracture the rock before pneumatic hammers could be used.
Oh my God, no!
As the rescue continued, aid shipments came from across the country. Organizations, schools, and worried citizens sent warm clothes and food to help the rescuers, who by then were totally exhausted. Some slept only 2 to 3 hours whenever possible, while others continued working. The opening was soon large enough for
Phenomenal.
12 people to work simultaneously. On day 3, diving and tunneling continued, and communication had to be done through the tiny crevice, and they tried lifting Zolt's spirits while he was trying to guide his rescuers closer with instructions. Divers sent light signals with strobes, and they even released ping pong balls underwater.
It's so weird, like, to be stuck in a part of a cave and then, like, you can't even tell them how to get to you because you don't know how you got there.
In hopes one would float up to Zolt.
How long do y'all think
They
y'all
also
would
tried to settle
survive?
the silty water by using chemicals to clear it and improve visibility. These chemicals are used to bind stirred up mud and particles floating in the water, causing them to stick together, get heavier, and then sink to the bottom.
Smart.
Unfortunately, this only works slightly, increasing visibility to just around 20 centimeters or 8 inches. As all of this was going on, as you might
8
imagine,
inches?
inside the alcove, time
I know a
crawled.
thing or two about it.
Then in contrast, for the rescuers, it raced. Everyone knew Zolt's condition was worsening, and they needed to get him out soon before it was too late.
Okay.
Progress was slow though, 3 meters or 10 feet by day 2, then 6 meters or 19 by day 3, because it turned out they needed to drill much deeper in the hard rock than they first thought. Mining
God.
experts had previously suggested that they could blast open the crack the rescuers and Zolt were communicating through, but several rescuers believed this wasn't practical. It wasn't even certain that he was on the other side
How'd
of
you
that
get
specific
there?
crack. And on top of all of that, it might be too dangerous. The work noises calmed Zolt a little bit, but he was also cold, hungry, and tired. After being trapped for so long, he was losing his patience, and he scared the rescuers when he said he might try to exit the passage on his own. On day 4, in the early hours of Tuesday, the tunnel was estimated to only have 4 meters or 13 feet left. Zolt, however, kept falling in and out of sleep, waking up to the sounds of the micro-explosions. All the blasts made the alcove smell like gunpowder, but finally there was a breakthrough in locating him. Zoli and the team had come up with a new idea. Earlier, they had mapped known sections of the Devil's Pub.
Terrifying.
Combined with Zolt's dive computer data, it would allow them to pinpoint and narrow the search area. So waking him from the half-sleep, they asked him for his dive computer's last depth data, which he shouted through the crack. This then immediately clarified where he had gotten lost and where to search. Laszlo then continued searching, feeling blindly around in the murky water.
Yo,
Then,
Laszlo's a
at 11:40
badass,
a.m.,
bro.
he finally reached the alcove. He surfaced and immediately examined Zolt, whose condition was stable, but there was still a race against time. From that moment on, rescuers took turns keeping Zolt company, and someone was constantly by his side. The rescue divers then delivered glucose and electrolyte drinks, and then heating pads, insulating foil, and even a makeshift bed. But then his condition began to deteriorate.
What?
The plan was to get him out after breaking the wall to avoid having him dive out. In his weakened state, he wouldn't have been able to swim out under his own power, and if they tried to rescue him by pulling him through the cold water, they would risk him going into shock or fainting.
Shit.
In the late evening, they still hadn't succeeded, and his condition became alarming enough that a doctor was flown in by helicopter. He started treating Zolt with oral medications, but his pulse was barely noticeable.
A doctor with no dive experience, by the way. Imagine having to crawl into a cave and
and kidney shutdown was feared.
oh my god.
The doctor then called up for more meds and would end up spending 11 hours straight in the water. After a while, Zolt's condition finally started improving and he could begin eating solid food. Then his body temperature returned to normal and he gained some strength.
Jesus, bro.
On day 5, the drilling sounds were getting closer and suddenly a palm-sized rock fell from the wall and light poured in. At 3:40 p.m., the tunnel was finally complete. The rescuers couldn't fit a stretcher in the narrow tunnel, so Zolt had to crawl out on his own. They then secured him onto a stretcher and pulled him out of the cave on a special
Just said a
ropeway.
stretcher wouldn't fit.
At 4:55 p.m., after 118 grueling hours, Zolt had finally been saved.
118
In total,
hours.
hundreds of people participated in the rescue. 122 cavers, 64 divers, who altogether made 286 dives, and 55 other organizations such as police, army, fire departments, and various other companies. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. And a special thanks to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon or as a channel member. If you're interested, we offer early...
I mean, here's like, this video was like clearly why I would never ever enter a cave of any sort. So, I mean, if you like cave diving, fucking unsubscribe and get out of my face. We have nothing in common. Leave me alone. Like, comment, subscribe.